What about your life as a traveler? I mean, why don't you stay put?
Well, I mean, that's where I make my money, out on the road. I mean, you have to go out on the road physically to earn it, you know.
Yeah, but you're not just in this for the money.
No, I'm not. I'm just trying to get enough together to start an Amway distribution.
How many more cities before you get one, do you figure?
Oh boy, I've got 30 cities in the next 30 days.
Is it pleasant? Is it just something you put up with, this life on the road? Well, you get 30 cities in 30 days.
Right.
That's physically a hard thing to do, isn't it, Jay?
Well, no, not really. I mean, I enjoy the work. As soon as you hit the stage, it becomes very easy. You know, I'll sit on a plane next to a guy, and he'll have his briefcase out, and I got to make this sale. Or, Mr. Honeywell will kill me if I don't get back to the office with this. And I'm just sitting there reading a magazine or something. So to me, I find it very relaxing. I mean, I work for myself. I'm my own boss. I come and go as I please. I can do as long or as short on stage as I want. Yeah. So it's actually, I mean, I find it easier than having to memorize 60 or 70 pages of dialogue in a sitcom every week.
Yeah. Your early days in comedy, sort of a retrospective.
Yes.
Were really difficult, weren't they? I mean, I know that I used to live in Boston. I know the Combat Zone.
Well, I know they were like the guy who picks up after the elephant in show business, you know. I used to work a place on Washington Street in the Combat Zone. They had a big sign that said nude, and then a little sign with Jay Leno. That was my favorite marquee.
The impression people have of that kind of thing, though, is that they're throwing things at the comedian to get him off because they want the new woman to come on.
Impression.
It would?
Yeah. I used to work at a little place in Revere, Massachusetts, where the owner would tell me to wear old clothes because the people would throw lit cigarettes at you. You'd be on stage and they'd smoke the cigarette down, and they'd go, ding, ding, and they'd throw them at you while you're on stage. And I watched him MC one night, and his jacket was all burn holes from people flicking things at him. And I remember working there, and he would wear sunglasses too, so if they hit him in the eye, it would bounce off. But I remember working there, and like these wing things would fly by your ear, and you'd hear snickering. It was terrible.
You got hit with a ketchup bottle once, somewhere.
I did.
Right?
At the cellar door in Washington. I was opening for Muddy Waters. The guy snuck up behind me with a ketchup bottle, knocked me out cold. I got 8 stitches in the back of the head, and I was docked a day's pay because the owner said, "You're a professional, you should expect this kind of thing to happen." And so he docked me a day's pay.
Did it ever have the effect on you of thinking that you ought to do something else?
What, and quit show business? No, not really. I mean, it was, at the time it was horrible, but you're a kid. I was like 22 years old, and I was in show business. I was on the road. It was, you know, I had a dressing room with 6 nude girls. You know, I was making $20 a night. My friends were at Wendy's for $1.18 an hour, so it was a great job compared to what my friends were doing.
Was that a big boost toward your deciding you wanted to go into show business, or was it something that you knew? Was that something you knew all along?
No, I didn't. I have no idea I was going to be in show business. I just assumed that I would be some sort of gregarious salesman, and I would do this at night. You know, I came from a small town in Massachusetts, and that was the kind of town that if you had a friend who knew a guy who went out with Sandra Dee's cousin, you were in show business. You know, in Boston, in New England, people say, show business, why don't you become a doctor or a lawyer or something? Out here, they go, a doctor? No, you should be a dancer. Don't go to medical school. You know, I mean, it's the exact opposite. No, I went in to see a guy, and I looked through the phone book for managers in Boston. I looked under managers, and I went to see this guy who handled wrestlers. But I didn't know he handled wrestlers. I walked into his office, and he had one of those big cardboard cutouts of Gorilla Monsoon. And I said I was a comedian. He looked at me and said, well, how tall are you? About 6 foot? I said, what do you weigh, about 180 pounds? He said, I got it. You can be the comedy wrestler. That's it, the comedy wrestler. You get a guy in a choke, and you tell him a joke. He's laughing so hard, he falls down, and you pin him. It's a great idea. And I actually went, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Gee, gosh, I mean, I came this close to being a comedy wrestler.
How do you account for the fact that your material has such a broad base of acceptance? Because there's so many comedians, the majority of them seem to appeal to one audience, young, hip, old, square.
I think you try to do things that are obviously relate to most Earthlings, you know. I mean, if you come in and you do Klingon material, most Earthlings aren't going to relate to material based in a nitrogen-based atmosphere.
That's true.
See, I mean, if you're doing nitrogen-based atmosphere jokes, people don't get it. So you try to do things that, know your audience.
Yeah.
I think it probably comes from the fact that I've always been more or less a journeyman comedian. You know, I didn't start out in TV or film. I started out doing this, and as you come up through the ranks, through that kind of Kiwanis Club, B'nai B'rith, Knights of Columbus luncheon circuit, you try to find things that make each individual group laugh. You know, when I do Vegas, it's a little different show than if I do a college. And when I do a concert, it's a little different than when you do a nightclub. You know, so you try to change it to suit the audience that you're working with.
Thoughts about the future, Jay?
Thoughts about the future?
Yes, not yours, the future of the planet.
Yeah.
No, yours. Do you have specific goals, or are you happy enough?
I mean, do I have some sort of Stalinistic 5-year mini-week plan of entertainment plan for myself?
Yeah, is there a particular role you want? Is there a particular degree of eminence? Is there a particular magazine you want to be on the cover of? A particular endorsement you want? You want to keep eating Doritos the rest of your life?
The Doritos I enjoy. No, I don't actually. My thing has always been, if you keep coming up with new jokes and new material, the future pretty much takes care of itself. I mean, that's why going on the road I think is important, because it keeps you from getting isolated. You know, when I watch a lot of the old timers, not the great ones like George Burns, but you know, the guys that were maybe hits 20 or 30 years ago that you haven't seen in a while, I always wonder, why aren't these guys still around? And I go see them, and all their jokes are about, gee, when I was a kid we had this, or geez, when I was a kid we didn't have this. And I realized nothing as funny has happened to them since they've become rich and successful, you know? Yeah. When you have the maid fix the Freon leak in the refrigerator, you know, there's no joke there. You could get a joke there, going down to the hardware store and arguing with the guy, and you know, all this kind of stuff. Yeah. I mean, I went down to a department store the other day that my water heater broke. I wanted to buy a 50-gallon water heater. I said to the guy, I want a water heater. He said, you want a hot water heater? And I said, yeah, I want a water heater. He goes, but one that heats the water? I said, yes, all right, a hot water heater, all right? I mean, I argued with this guy about the pronunciation of this for about 5 minutes, and somewhere there's a joke there, but you know, that wouldn't have happened if I called somebody to come fix it.